All right, unfiltered, unbuttoned, and no less apologetic. Another go around here on the Vidcast. No big secret that, pulling people into the profession of policing has been excruciatingly difficult. Not just here in Charlotte, across the country, major city police departments just having a challenging time bringing the young, the best, and the brightest into the profession. And no less difficult for the profession is keeping people in policing, keeping them engaged and keeping them inspired enough to want to stay in the profession. This woman right here is a woman who I've known for a lot of years. She's done a lot in our community with this police department. Mandy Giannini on patrol. She was in the public affairs office, specialized units, domestic violence detective, rape detective with our sex assault unit. Gets 2/3 of the way through her career and essentially says, nah, enough, I'm out. And big loss. First of all, thanks.
You're welcome.
That you would come back into town.
Yeah.
After going through this meat grinder for as long as you've been. We could talk about what you're doing now in your afterlife, but you hit a tipping point.
I did. It mostly just boiled down to just family work-life balance. I have 2 children, and just the demands of the job and the more and more responsibilities, the more and more days that they were putting on to us, having to work on our days off, changing our schedules around unexpectedly, and then just the whole political climate and the sentiment towards police officers is just something that has really taken a turn.
Let's unpack all that. We can get to the politics of it in just a little bit. You talked about that work-life balance, and it's a real balance. You were a single mom for a while.
Right.
13-year-old, 11-year-old children. This isn't the kind of profession that's conducive to a good, healthy, balanced home life, is it?
No, it's not. And at the end of the day, my kids are going to remember when I'm not there for their events, their sporting events, their, horseback shows, all of that stuff. They're going to notice, and they do notice when I'm not there. And oftentimes I was being pulled away because of the responsibilities of the job. And while I loved that time, and I look back fondly on that time that I was spent with the police department, it just came down to I want to be there and present for my children.
Yeah, to your point, you never ever get that time back, right. And I think few who aren't in the business could really appreciate just how big of a demand that the profession has on on the personal life. You've done a lot. I mean, you loved this job. I've known you for, you for 15 years or so. And, you're one of the first officers I met when I got to town. And you've always had just glowed whenever you talked about policing and serving and being a guardian in the community. Any trepidation about getting out? It's got to be a kind of a conflicting feeling for you, I would imagine. Oh,
it was probably the worst and the biggest decision I've ever made. It was a very difficult one. For those of us who have been policing, I mean, I was doing it for almost 19 years. Yeah. I was a police officer much longer than I've been a mother, a wife, any of that stuff. So it was part of my identity, and I loved the people I worked with. I loved serving the community. And so it was very difficult for me to leave. I had started looking just because of the way things were going. I started looking. I didn't think that another opportunity would present itself as quickly as it did. So when I left, it was sort of abrupt, and I felt a tremendous amount of guilt. I left shortly after the pandemic started, and then we had the civil unrest. My buddies that are still with the police department were texting me, cussing me, chiding me.
Yeah. We need you back in the bunker with us, right? Where are you, Mandy?
Or, sure. You escaped, how dare you leave us? And it was, and still is, I feel a tremendous amount of guilt. but also I have so much more peace of mind.
Yeah, I couldn't begin to imagine, the afterlife, coming out on the other end in the private sector and with so many things that the private sector has to offer. You talked about, the sentiment in the country, and, I know that was somewhat of a driver for you, and you had gotten out before things really hit a crescendo. But, this has kind of been bubbling for years,
right.
This pushback from, some in society, on the profession and, the way that it's been vilified. And, what are your thoughts there?
It's interesting. It was probably about 2 years ago is when I personally started to realize that it used to be just certain people within the community that didn't like police officers. It wasn't until about 2 years ago, myself and two other female officers, were at a very nice event at a country club. We were celebrating a friend of ours' accomplishments. And, there we are, we're gussied up, we got our dresses on, we're just kind of escaping for the night, celebrating our friend. And he introduced us to one of his coworkers, and he said something to the effect of, "Can you believe that they're police officers?" And his coworker's face just changed. And she said to us, "I just don't understand why you all keep killing people." And we were completely taken off guard. We're out at this nice place and, in cocktail dresses, not even thinking about what our profession is. And so that was the first time that I wasn't prepared for it. I was prepared for those types of comments when I was in uniform. But certainly not expecting it at that venue. And so from there on, I guess I started to see that there are a whole lot more people who have misconceptions of policing and what we do. And that was a sad time.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you don't get into this business, better than me. You
Right.
get into this business to get rich. You're not going to you're not going to make a mint
Right.
doing this. The salary's modest. You get into it because you want to feel like you have impact, that you're changing lives, and that at the end of the day, maybe there's some kind of gratitude, or at least appreciation, right? For what it is. You were seeing that less and less in those small pockets of people who were kind of critical of the profession. You kind of saw that blossom. Is that what kind of got things going?
Right. That was the first time that I wasn't expecting it. So that was the first time that I sort of recognized that there was a growing resentment towards police officers, and then it's kind of built, I guess through social media and through, reports. I think I told you this. I used to joke with my neighbors anytime that there was something that would happen where we'd get called in or our days off would be canceled. They'd kind of rally to help me with childcare and everything. And I always joked and said, being a police officer in Charlotte, North Carolina, you're either one hurricane or one police-involved event away from being on 12-hour shifts with no days off. And now it doesn't even have to happen locally. Anything that happens nationally, even if it's not even in the state or city, can cause all of this havoc, and officers to have to reorganize and replan their life. And it just got to the point where with my children, I couldn't have any kind of schedule that they could rely on.
Your thoughts on the way things have bubbled up of late, and some of the sentiment that we're seeing now, nationally and even here locally. I mean, we've had our bout, here locally. I know you're watching from the sideline, but what goes through your mind?
It's sad. I think it's very sad that there are so many police officers. I mean, not to sound trite, but people do this job because they want to make a difference, and they want to help others. And when that's overlooked, or people think that, you know, somebody said something like, oh, police officers, they were just, you know, bullied as children, so now they want to get out there and, you know, kind of be the strong arm of the law. That's not the case at all. I never, in my near 20 years with policing, I never saw anybody do anything inappropriate, and I think that it's a shame that people think that people do that. Yeah. Officers do that, because it's not the case.
How heartbreaking is it for someone like you who love this profession as much as you love this profession, to see where we are right now as a society?
It is. It's sad. And I have some stickers on my car, my personal car, that say, you know, blue lives. You know, I think it says heroes live forever, and it has the thin blue line. And my daughter, who's 13, had said, Mommy, I think you need to take that off your car, because she was afraid that maybe my car or us would be targeted because of it. And it's these things that are proud for police officers, the thin blue line, that show support for police officers, how they've been manipulated into becoming something that is hateful, is heartbreaking to me, because it's showing support for my brothers and sisters in blue. It's not anything to do with being hateful.
Yeah, you got to watch, and you know, it's kind of the world that we're living in now. What you say, how you say it, who you say it to, how it lands. You have to measure every syllable.
Correct.
Because they'll cancel you out. You know, it's just a really topsy-turvy time to be living in this country. You talked a little bit earlier about the politics and about how the politics have kind of crept into the profession and the perception of the profession. And we had some offline conversations on the way over to the studio, and she had made reference to, you know, just some of the irresponsible dialogue that's coming from some politicians. Unpack that too. That's not helpful when we're trying to build bridges, is it?
No, it's not. A few years ago, we were called terrorists by a member of City Council. And that was a real low blow. And then, you know, we have organizations, sporting organizations that we do a lot for, we protect, and we have them bailing out people who have committed crimes, one of which, and I know they were nonviolent offenders, or the majority of them were, but one of which I had arrested several times for organized retail theft. And so it's just a slap in the face that here in this county, we work so hard to make cases that are actually going to be prosecuted. Cross our T's, dot our I's, do all of this hard work, and then to have them bailed out or, you know, dismissed after we've done all that hard work. You get to a point where you don't want to put in the effort, but you do because that's the right thing to do. But it's not appreciated.
Well, and that's a big loss. I mean, you alone, I mean, 20 years of service, 20 years of experience that this department lost, 20 years of experience that this community has lost. I mean, that's immeasurable when you really think about that. You know, you could march as many people as you wanted to the training academy, but you can't quantify that kind of deficit we have now with experience. And she's not alone. People, you know, it's not just this department, you know, all over the country are just, they're bailing, they're, you know, going to greener pastures, and that's what you did. So now you flip it to the private sector, and it's got to be awfully foreign to you not to strap on that belt and that uniform every day.
It is, and it's still, I'm still sort of fresh out of it. You know, everything is like you said, topsy-turvy. These last few months, everything has been different. So not only am I learning a new way of life, but I'm doing it in a very strange times where we have all of these other things that are going on. So I'm not sure if it's fully hit me yet. I think when we were talking on the way over here, someone got a little snippy with me. And I sat there and took it for a while, and then I remembered I'm not a police officer anymore. I can bless this person out if I want to. Yeah. So there's a little bit more freedom in that respect. Sure. which is nice. But
she'll bless them out with the best of them. Just knowing Mandy the way that I know Mandy.
Well, you said that you thought of me for this because I was outspoken, and I thought that was probably code for something else.
Yeah. No, she's unbuttoned, unfiltered, and definitely the definition of unapologetic. You've got the epitome of it right here. That is empowering. But sad at the same time.
It's very sad. It's very sad. And I can't say it enough. I feel badly for the people I've left behind, the ones, I think that in this profession, especially with the 30-year retirement, I think that there are so many people who are like, I've worked this hard, I've gone 20 years, I'm gonna make it to retirement, I'm gonna get that full. And
they're jaded, a lot of them at this point, with what's bubbling up. And what are they doing? They're running out the clock.
Correct. Right? And I just knew that I couldn't make it 10 more years. I just couldn't. And I couldn't. It wasn't going to be good for my family. It wasn't going to be good for me. And I think that if we felt more support from the community, more support from our city council and our leaders, I think that many more officers, we don't do this job, or I didn't do this job for accolades, certainly not for pay, not for the hazards that we face every day. So, community members who would come up to us and just say, hey, we appreciate you, that went a long way. And when you don't get that from the people you're serving, it's disheartening.
I know you're one of the more optimistic people that I know. I want to try to tap into some of that optimism. Do you see this ever getting back to where it needs to be?
I don't know. I think it would take a lot. I think that there has to be some very genuine conversations with police officers and their leaders to talk about expectations from both sides. I think that more people need to do police ride-alongs. They need to experience and see what we see. No one calls 911 because they're having a good day. No. So we see people at their worst and have to... the community wants us to be ambassadors and to be experts in a variety of different areas, social workers, mediators,
mentors, school resource officers, drug counselors, clinicians, mental
marriage
health experts.
counselors.
It goes towards the gamut. Yeah, so much is asked of the profession now. But you are optimistic, right? I'm going to pull it out of you. You are optimistic, right? You feel like things, we could have a course correction if everything aligns to the extent it should.
I think so. We need, instead of keeping police officers out of schools, we need to have more conversations in the schools. We need to have more conversations in the community with to change, to correct the misinformation, the misconceptions. And so I think that's the only way that we can make a headway, because pulling police officers out of functions, parades, and things that they are normally welcomed, to have this stigma that having a police officer there is bad, it's not helping. We need to be out there in front of people, having conversations with people, with community members, so they can see that at the end of the day, we're mothers and wives and brothers and sisters. We're not the bad guy.
2 children, 13 and 11.
Yes.
Ask a lot of our guests this. Would you encourage your children to get into the biz?
Absolutely not.
Wow.
Absolutely not.
And you know what? That's heartbreaking, because this is a woman who flat out loved this profession.
That's right.
That's heartbreaking. So you wouldn't let your children, you wouldn't encourage that?
I would not encourage that whatsoever. I think that this is not going to be good, and I'm sure the recruiting department isn't going to. I think that for you to want to become a police officer in this day and age, I can't understand why anyone would intentionally want to put themselves through that. Except for if you feel like you have a much higher calling, and I feel like I've let myself down because I didn't finish out my 30 years. I feel I'm upset that I didn't have it in me to go that extra 10 years. But I also knew my limitations and knew that it was in my best interest to leave when I did. And that was the disappointment that I have in myself is probably the most upsetting.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. This is the life you knew for so many years, 2 decades.
2 decades.
What a loss. Personally, us collectively as a community. But you're on the other side now.
Yeah.
And happy as a clam, I guess that's a term. If it wasn't, it is now. Big news, too, right?
Oh, yeah. Big news.
Bling, bling going on there. Big day coming up. Not too
big day. No.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
You excited?
I am excited. It seems like 2020 is looking up.
Well, for someone,
Right.
I knew I'd walk away with some damn optimism, having sat down on the couch with her, and good, you didn't disappoint. Hey, look, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
The community. If you didn't know Mandy Giannini during her almost 20 years here, shame on you. It's a big loss for you guys. A big loss for all of us to lose her to the private sector. Damn good cop. Better person. And I know how busy you are, and for you to take a couple of minutes and find some time for us, it immensely appreciated.
I'm happy to do it.
Mandy Giannini, great cop, great individual, great person, great woman, great loss, as I think all of us would agree. Tommy One Take.
Robert.
On the back. And Tommy One Take, good enough to sit on the couch and join us on the back end, and you listen to her, and
yep.
That's a big loss.
I think in any job, people want to be appreciated.
Yeah.
It goes for law enforcement, it goes for the banking, it goes for our frontline workers. You just want to feel appreciated, and it's hard to feel that when you have outspoken critics.
2/3 of her way through a career, almost 20 years of a 30-year career, kind of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, and then just to come to this decision that I'm out, and again I can't emphasize how big of a loss that is to the community. And you can't think, when you really unpack it, that she's the only one thinking it, not only here in town but across the country, that others are giving serious consideration to going off to greener pastures, and that's a concern.
I think there would be a large number of law enforcement officers who have gone through their career and at one point or another, maybe not long term, but have thought about, do I still want to do this?
Does that ever cross
Sure.
your mind?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of times those are moments of weakness, having a bad day, something upsets you, and you're just like, do I want to do this? But like I said, that probably goes for any job, whether it be the place you work for or whether it just be the career itself. But think about it. How many people in their career stay at one place for 30 years?
No, people that are loyal to it and devoted and committed to it, and that's what this profession is.
But outside law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had about that.
People jump from company to company. They do different things.
A 30-year commitment to anything.
Yeah.
That's a big ask.
It is. And I think outside of law enforcement, those people are rare. That you find people that stay at one position, one job, one company for 30 years.
Well, she was smart enough during the course of her career, and I know her really, really well, that she kept reinventing herself. Public affairs, communication, patrol, then got into these specialty units in domestic violence as a detective, and then flipped over to sex assault as a rape detective, then back out on patrol, community coordinator. She's done a lot, and maybe that's what keeps it fresh and keeps them energized. I was talking with a cop not too long ago. I was doing a ride-along with him, and 10-year cop. Good guy. Really, really good guy. Engaged, active officer. He tells me, look, the conversations that I've been having, some really deep conversations with my wife over the dinner table over the last several weeks, she wants me out. You know, he speaks several different languages. He's got a degree, super duper upside, and there's a multitude of opportunities for him in the private sector. He's sticking to his decision to remain in the profession. But you can't tell me that those dinner time conversations aren't occurring across the country. You know in your heart of hearts, your wife's not too thrilled and amped having you in the business.
So my wife has always been supportive of what I want to do and what makes me happy. She's cut from a different cloth, comes from a lineage of cops. So I think she maybe gets that more than most, and she understands it's not easy. Doesn't mean she doesn't worry, doesn't mean it doesn't give her heartburn or anything to that effect.
But if push came to shove and we were in the honesty business and you'd sit her down and you'd say, honey, let's have this conversation. I'm thinking about getting out. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm teetering here. What do you think she says to you, Tom?
Who do you think was happiest when I said, hey, I'm going to come off the streets and go work in public affairs?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't wear a vest. I'm still a cop. I still, we still feel like we have targets on our back at some points. Whenever I'm in uniform, I always feel like I have that target on my back. But, she knows I'm not out there answering those calls for service. And, maybe it makes her sleep a little better at night.
Yeah, I remember you telling me how upset she was, and I hope I'm not overstepping, when all the demonstrations were bubbling up, and you caught her in a very candid moment where she was visibly upset by what this profession was being perceived as.
Yeah, I mean, we don't like that, so how do you think our loved ones feel when they see that hatred out there of people just beyond anger at law enforcement for what they do, when you have this other side of just support? I mean, how many other jobs do you have somebody that either loves or hates you for what you do?
Yeah.
There are people out there that support us. I was reminded that this morning. I had a breakfast meeting before coming in. Was coming to work right afterwards, so I'm in uniform. Hey, someone paid for my breakfast. Just appreciation of law enforcement. Hey,
And he's not a cheap date. This guy could eat, I'll tell you what.
But it wasn't even the person I was with. It was just another customer that paid for the meal. There are people out there to support law enforcement.
Yeah.
And we cannot lose that fact.
No, and you can't lose sight of that. And I know it's easy to get distracted and sidetracked by, some of the vitriol that's kind of piping up around the country. I still believe the overwhelming majority of people do. They really, really do. Yep. But they can't be the silent majority.
And that's the problem we're in right now.
Well, yeah, and that's what it is. And, Mandy hit it right on the head. Look, I'm not looking to become Rockefeller in this profession. Just maybe, every once in a while I feel like I'm supported and people are appreciative. I think they are, but maybe that's not conveyed frequently enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, we hear it, but I think those people against it are louder. Yeah. Right now, at least.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What's going on at home?
Well, got some things planned for the weekend, trying to celebrate our anniversary that we had to put off for a month because of, COVID. So,
Mr. Romance over here, what do you got planned? You get, whiskering away to the Riviera,
We'll start with a babysitter and dinner. How about
that? Setting that bar low. And interestingly enough, we talked about this before. You guys had a kind of a unique way, for those who missed one of our first broadcasts, kind of a unique way that you and Kristen, he's a great guy, Kristen. You know that, though. You guys had a really unique way of meeting. Well, you know, I love getting this guy.
No one wants to hear me talk.
Of course they do. Match.com.
The only person that probably wants to hear me talk is your wife, because it means less of you talking, right?
Well, if you keep setting the bar so damn high, she's going to have these lofty expectations of me, and I do my level best, and some days are better than the others. Better than others, but that is kind of cool, man. How many years together you?
July was 9 years.
9 years. Look at you, man.
Yeah, hey.
Young love. Gosh.
Yeah.
You gonna do something special?
No.
Well, you don't want to ruin it here?
We'll wait till the 10-year anniversary, then we'll do something special.
Well, you're like the romantic kind of guy, dinner and dancing and.
So we appreciate everyone joining us
Tommy.
This week, right?
Never,
Great show.
Never at a loss for words until we get down rabbit holes like this. Hey, I know how busy you are, man. I'm encouraged to hear that at the very least you got a good breakfast on somebody else's dime, it sounds like.
Never a bad thing. Right?
No, it's a hell of a way to start the day for sure. Thank you, man. I know your day is going to be slamming, as always. Appreciate you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here, too. Appreciate everyone at home. Thanks for taking a couple of minutes with us to take a look in. We'll be back around, another go-around, and continue to unpack these important conversations. In the meantime, we hope everyone at home takes care of each other, take care of themselves, be healthy, stay healthy, Stay safe and
Stay tuned.
oh, look at this guy.
Right on cue.
Oh my, like a prodigy.
I learn.
We'll see you next go around.